Childcare Aware of America's webinar series has been a 5-month campaign to help shape the ongoing national conversation around various opportunities that enrich the state of childcare and early education in this country. This is Lynette Fraga, and I'm the Executive Director for Childcare Aware of America. And the Raise Your Hand webinar series that you're listening to aim to raise awareness about federal and state early learning opportunities that support childcare, connect participants with content experts, and inspire all who care about early learning to take action to better the lives of working families. Our final webinar is about creating an effective technical assistance system to develop high-quality early learning programs. We are thrilled to have an amazing team with us today. Billie Young, Senior Advisor for the National Association for the Education of Young Children, and Sheila Smith, Director of Early Childhood at the National Center on Children in Poverty. I would also like to give a big thanks to Debbie Mathias, the Director of the QRIS National Learning Network at the BUILD Initiative, for many of the resources you'll see throughout this presentation. Before I turn it over to our presenters, I would like to point your attention to the questions box function, which should be located on the right side of your screen. Please use this function to submit questions, and we will be sure to field those questions throughout the course of the webinar. If you have more general questions, please submit those at the conclusion of the webinar today. And without further delay, let's get started. Sheila, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Lynette. Welcome, everyone, and thanks so much for joining this webinar. Billie Young and I are very happy to have a chance to talk with you today about some key goals and strategies for building effective TA systems. I just want to mention that our presentation draws on a learning table we conducted with Debbie Mathias at BUILD, and Debbie's expertise is very much a part of what we'll present today. Here we go. Here you see our agenda for this session. We'll talk about some key components of effective TA and TA systems, and also tell you about several resources that we hope will be helpful to you in your work. And then we'll have time for questions and discussion, and I know we will benefit from the expertise in our audience. I'm going to start off by addressing a basic question that we think is central to designing TA systems. And that question is, what do we want to achieve through technical assistance? Often the goal of TA is described in fairly general terms. We say we want to increase the quality of programs, or we want to improve quality so that more children are ready to succeed in school. So in the next few minutes, I'd like to try to unpack the concept of school readiness and talk about the specific child outcomes in the preschool years that predict school readiness and the practices in early care and education settings we should target because we know they promote important child outcomes. So I'm going to draw on research over the past 2 decades that clearly points to a set of competencies children need to do well in school. And then I'll highlight early care and education practices that have been shown in research to help children acquire these. And along the way, I'll also encourage all of us to consider what preparation and what supports TA providers need to better target these outcomes. Well, it probably won't surprise anyone that social emotional competence is key to school success. We've learned quite a lot about specific skills in this domain that help children learn in preschool and beyond. These include familiar social skills such as cooperation and the ability to show positive interest in others' ideas. But children also benefit from having an understanding of emotions and even an expansive emotion vocabulary, as well as the ability to regulate or manage emotions. We know that social emotional competence is related to children's engagement in learning and also positive relationships with teachers and peers. Both of these predict to better learning outcomes and school success. We've also learned a great deal about teaching practices that help children acquire social emotional competence, and I showed some of these here. You can see that these are really varied and complex teaching practices that need to be used in different contexts during the preschool day. And when you consider their importance for children's social emotional growth, you can see that TA providers really need deep knowledge about social-emotional learning and skills in helping teachers use a range of teaching practices across different situations. We also have a wealth of knowledge about competencies that promote later reading success. Both oral language and literacy skills are key to later reading success, and supports for oral language really need to be a part of every activity during the day, especially for children who enter a program or child care setting with weak language skills. We now know about many effective teaching practices that support children's language from infancy through preschool, and these include conversation about interesting topics, the use of explanations, pictures, and props to teach new vocabulary, and ways to encourage children's use of new language. We also know that some intentional teaching of letters and phonological awareness skills is important to do through games and activities. Again, helping teachers use these varied strategies requires TA providers with extensive knowledge about effective supports for young children's language and literacy growth and coaching skills that help teachers actively practice using these supports. We know that early math skills predict both math and reading achievement, and here you can see some of the key areas of early math learning. And I think that currently many of our early care and education programs are somewhat limited to focusing on counting and looking at quantities of items, and you can see there's really a much wider set of skills and areas of knowledge that go into early math competencies. So we've learned a lot from research about practices that can support early math learning, although I think we're at a somewhat earlier stage in this. But certainly we know that teachers should be engaging in daily intentional teaching of math concepts and skills in developmentally appropriate activities, and also using a lot of what people refer to as math talk. That's using math concepts just in everyday conversations with children. There's also an emerging set of specialized and general curricula that teachers need to know about for incorporating early math learning into the day. I wanted to mention that in an interview study that NCCP conducted with TA providers that I'll mention again later, we actually found that coaches focused on practices in this domain very little. This was one of the areas where the TA providers said that they really didn't focus a lot of their coaching, suggesting that TA providers may not have enough knowledge and perhaps not enough confidence about best practices in this area. Now, we've also learned from research in recent years that executive function and positive approaches to learning are important capacities that help children learn across the curriculum. And I liked this picture because I think it really helps us see some of these capacities. For example, the ability to regulate attention and behavior, as well as motivation and persistence, things that children really need when working on challenging tasks. I think we're at an earlier stage in understanding teaching practices that support executive function and approach to learning, but there are some promising practices that have been found in curricula and models that have demonstrated some support for these capacities. And so in one curriculum, you may have heard of Tools of the Mind. This curriculum provides a lot of opportunities for children to plan some of their activities and to experience sustained attention through longer periods of planned thematic play. We also know that classrooms that are successful in reducing stress and that provide strong supports for children's social-emotional competence also promote executive functioning. These seem to be environments where children can really develop the capacity to focus their attention and experience longer engagement in learning activities. So I wanted to mention two other important areas of teaching practice that have strong links to children's learning and school readiness, but seem also to get less attention in technical assistance and coaching. One of these is monitoring children's learning and individualizing supports for learning, which can be really critical for children who enter programs or settings with skills that are weak in particular domains. The other is early learning focused parent engagement, which has been getting a lot of attention lately, but hasn't been a very strong focus in technical assistance. So again, given the role that these practices can play in supporting children's school readiness, it's really important to consider them as important targets of TA and coaching. So here is a very simple logic model where I'm just showing that if TA targets practices that promote competencies children need to do well in school, the TA has the potential to achieve child outcomes that matter for school success. So now we come to a question that I think is very important for our field right now, and that is, how well is TA targeting key child outcomes and practices that support these outcomes? And I think at least a few studies and a fair amount of anecdotal evidence suggest that quite a lot of TA focuses more on global quality rather than on specific teaching practices that promote children's foundational competencies, the ones we've just reviewed. So going back to our logic model, this focus has much less potential to promote children's school readiness and school success. And the reports listed here, the reports and studies, can be found through a link that Billie will show you a little later. So here are some key questions that we think TA provider organizations and others who help design TA systems might want to ask in order to gain a better understanding of whether TA in their state or region is aimed at the right outcomes. First, do TA providers have the knowledge and skills to help teachers increase their use of practices that promote children's foundational competencies? Do TA providers receive training and ongoing support to target the most important features of quality, teacher practices that promote language, literacy, social-emotional growth, and other foundational competencies? And another we think is very important, does the TA provider organization collect and use information about the targets of TA and the methods used by TA providers? And finally, I wanted to mention again NCCP's TA provider study that asked TA providers in 17 states about what supports they would like, what supports they think would help them do their work more effectively. So here are some things that the TA providers mentioned that they wanted. First of all, they wanted an overall, an increase in the overall amount of training and supervision that they receive. They wanted training and supervision that provides models of effective practices and on-site guidance to TA providers. So they really wanted their supervisors to come on site and actually observe them providing TA and to give them some feedback based on that observation. They were interested in having opportunities to actually practice new skills in providing TA and coaching within the training sessions that they do receive. And in training and supervision, they wanted to focus more on coaching methods such as modeling and providing feedback, and strategies for working in sites where staff are resistant to change. So we were really struck by these responses, which suggest a great desire for support and guidance above and beyond what TA providers sometimes receive. And it also suggests their dedication to providing TA that makes a difference. And soon we're going to talk more about the larger system of TA and some key components and strategies for building that system. And with that, I will turn things over to Billie.
Thank you, Sheila. That was really wonderful. I really appreciate that you are taking us to a place of focusing on children's foundational competencies as the target for TA. And I'm really happy to be here with all of you because you represent probably the most influential player in technical assistance in states. I think in most states, the resource and referral agencies are the lead agency for working with technical assistance providers. So we're really lucky to have time with you to talk about this today and to learn from you. And I really appreciate that you're very dedicated to ensuring that the technical assistance in your states is as effective as it possibly can be, and we share that goal with you. When Sheila and Debbie Mathias of Build and I presented similar material at the NAEYC annual conference in November, I realized that Sheila was quietly rocking my world. I'd really been thinking about technical assistance in a global way, improving quality, improving the scores on the QRIS ratings, improving compliance with regulations, whether they're Head Start regulations or state child care regulations or other preschool regulations and so forth. So I'd really been thinking about TA in that way, and I suspect that many of us in the field had been focused on that. And what she's proposing is pretty radical because it really shifts our focus to reflect more deeply on what are our goals, what do we really want to achieve with technical assistance, and how is it delivered, what's needed to ensure that the technical assistance professionals out there working in the field are as effective as possible. So I want to focus on that second part, that second challenge, and look at the systems. This and really talk about how does technical assistance fit into your larger professional development system. This graphic shows an outline of NAEYC's blueprint for professional development systems. It has 6 policy areas across the top and then 4 overarching principles. So I want to ask, how is your technical assistance integrated into your overall professional development system? Is TA linked to community-based training and higher education courses as a tool to integrate knowledge-based learning into practice? Will technical assistance providers find themselves in the core knowledge and competencies, the career pathway, or Lattice? Are technical assistance professionals expected to be part of the training and registry or workforce data system? Is time spent with TAs accorded credit or clock hours? Does the professional development system advisory structure oversee policies for technical assistance as well? Are technical assistance providers able to access financial incentives and supports for their own continuing professional development? And is TA viewed from a cross-sector integrated system lens? Let's look a little bit at the building blocks for effective technical assistance. Let me see if I can change this slide. Aha. All right. So here are some building blocks, and you can think of it, in this is sort of a linear picture, but we could also think of this as a circle. And as we're building a system of effective technical assistance, we want to look at what are the qualifications, what are the minimum standards for people working as technical assistance professionals. What are their core knowledge and competencies and their dispositions that are needed to be effective in this role? We might develop credentials and special certifications for people working as coaches, mentors, and consultants. How do they fit into our pathways and our compensation initiatives? And what kind of training, education, supervision, evaluation, and support for their own reflective practice are they getting? What kind of data are we collecting? As we move around that circle or up that ladder of building blocks, that takes us back to then re-examining our qualifications, core knowledge and competencies, and so forth, in a continuous quality improvement model. And all of these building blocks for technical assistance need to be aligned with your state professional development system advisory structure, your workforce data, financing, and articulation policies. Let's take a look at a couple of different areas where states are making progress on qualifications, credentials, core knowledge and competencies, and pathways. But first, I'd like to hear from you about your own state. And we're going to do 3 little polls looking at, has your state established minimum qualifications, core knowledge and competencies, and career pathways. So Sarah, if you can kick off our first poll. All right, so here's the poll. Has your state established minimum qualifications for coaches, consultants, and mentors? And you can check as many as apply to your state. So just take your cursor and vote. And as soon as we've got some votes in, Sarah will show us our results. Sarah, can we see the results? All right, so it looks like half of your states, more than half the states, have established minimum qualifications for coaches and consultants, and about 41% for mentors. And that really makes sense. I think most of the action right now, because of what's happening with quality rating and improvement systems, is around coaching. So that's great. All right, let's have our second poll. Has your state established core knowledge and competencies for coaches, consultants, and mentors? So this is going beyond those minimum qualifications. Have you identified your core knowledge and competencies? And go ahead and check as many as are relevant for your state. We'll give you a minute to vote and then look at our results. Okay, pretty similarly, we've got core knowledge and competencies for coaches, 43% consultants, and 32% mentors. And that makes sense because I think it's a far more kind of involved process to develop those core knowledge and competencies. And hopefully, as states are developing these, you're aligning them with your core knowledge and competencies for other early childhood professionals and aligning them, I hope, with the NAEYC professional preparation standards. Let's do our last poll, see where we're at here. With including, does your state include the following in your career pathway, your career lattice? You might call it a career ladder. Do you include coaches, consultants, and mentors? Go ahead and vote for as many as are relevant, and we'll see where you're at with that. I'm really quite impressed and encouraged by the level of work that is happening around identifying policies around technical assistance professionals in our states. So let's see what our results are. So it looks like 46% include coaches in your career ladders, 50% consultants, and 38% mentors. All right, that's great. Thanks. We'll come back to how you can access more information about what states have been developing in that area. All right, so let's take a quick look at a few examples of how states are addressing qualifications, core knowledge and competencies, and pathways for technical assistance professionals. So we're going to start with qualifications. What are states looking at as the education, training, and experience? I'm going to give you 2 examples here. And the first one, is from the state of Georgia. And I really recommend, if you're interested in this, that you go to their website and look at their training approval for early childhood education technical assistance providers. They have 3 levels, and they have basically candidate, associate, and advanced technical assistance professional levels. And you can see that to be a candidate, you have to be currently providing TA with support and supervision, 3+ years of work experience in early childhood care and education, be enrolled in a bachelor's degree in early childhood ed or a similar field, and successfully completed the Art of Technical Assistance, including all course assignments and the qualifying exam. And the Art of Technical Assistance is a course that is required for all 3 levels of ECE TA providers. So there's lots more information on the website about the Georgia resources and requirements. And let's now look at some school-age requirements. So Schools Out Washington developed qualifications for school-age coaches, requiring a bachelor's degree. Now here it's somewhat broader degree because of the school-age field, so it could be elementary or secondary ed, social work, counseling, recreation, or a related field. Coaches for school-age need at least 3 years of experience, demonstrated experience in adult learning theory, and the ability to work with multilingual, multicultural populations. All right, let's take a look now at what states are doing around core competencies, what professionals should know and be able to do. And we'll look at one here from the state of Minnesota. I recommend their website as well. There are a lot of really great resources at their website. I've got the website on the slide here. But they have what they call relationship-based professional development. And that includes what we would call coaches, consultants, and mentors, and trainers, technical assistance providers. And we have a number of different terms that people are using for technical assistance professionals. Sometimes they're called TA professionals, TA providers, RBPD as in Minnesota. Vermont uses MATCH, M-A-T-C-H. So there are a number of different terms. If you're interested, and I hope you will check out the glossary for technical assistance professionals that was developed by CCA and NAEYC, and it's on our website. And you can go to NAEYC.org, go to the Public Policy tab, and go down to ECWSI, the Early Childhood Workforce Systems Initiative. So you can see here that they have 5 content areas: adult learning, building relationships, assessment and planning, communication, and change. And if you go to the website, there's a lot more detail in each of those content areas. Okay, we're going to look at one last area, and that is career pathways or lattices. This lattice is from Pennsylvania. I know it's too small for you to read, but I wanted to just give you a visual image of how this can work. So along the left side, you see the steps, step 1 through I think it's 8. Each of those steps is a different level of education and training. And you can see along the top right are the positions that, that can qualify at each level of the career lattice. So at level 1, a person could qualify to be an aide in the classroom, for example. And you need to reach level 6 to be qualified to be a technical assistance professional. So in this way, Pennsylvania has brought together their career lattice and all of the range of professions that the career lattice is applicable to, and they've integrated cross sectors and across professional categories. So I think that's really exciting. Now, it's really important to have standards and to identify your core knowledge and competencies, have credentials and pathways, but we know that that alone will not guarantee that we are going to have effective technical assistance. One of our findings when we did surveys and focus groups for NAEYC's Strategic Directions paper in 2012 was that support for technical assistance providers was highly inconsistent across states and within states. We found that the level of supervision, training, and preparation for them was on a broad continuum and quite dependent upon funding, program or initiative, and the capacity of sponsoring organizations. States told us that for the most part, their mentors, coaches, and consultants were drawn from the pool of trainers and higher ed faculty, and they said they were concerned that training and teaching skills are not always a good match for one-to-one TA. We all know that while it's important to establish standards and pathways, this is not enough to guarantee effective TA. Effective technical assistance requires this kind of systems work that we've just been talking about, as well as clarity about goals and outcomes, and a focus on the kinds of resources and support that technical assistance professionals need and want. To help you leverage the work of other states, NAEYC has created a database that has profiles of state technical assistance professional policies and links to their resources when possible. So if you go to our website, you will, and again, it's naeyc.org, Public Policy TAP Database. And when you go there, it's actually fairly intuitive, not to worry. You will see a page like this, and this is our public policy database around profiles for states and territories on their early childhood education, technical assistance professionals, coaches, mentors, and consultants. On the left-hand side, you'll see that you can open up, you can choose any one of 50 different states and 6 territories, and you can go to them and look at the kinds of policies that they have developed, and where possible, there will be links to those policies and to websites that will give you more information. So you can take a look at what's happening across the nation and in the territories, and hopefully scaffold upon the work that other states are doing. So I hope that you will continue to have reflective conversations about both your goals for technical assistance and how you can ensure that technical assistance providers have the skills, knowledge, dispositions, and resources they need to be successful. There are wonderful models being built all across the nation that you can use to scaffold your own systems to be even more effective. And you probably have some tools that you can share with other states as well. So one of the tools that we've developed that, as part of our Build Learning Table with the help of Sheila and Debbie Mathias is a little grid that at the top has you indicate what is the TA program or initiative, like might be coaching for quality rating and improvement system. What type of technical assistance is it? Is it primarily coaching, mentoring, or consultant? And then what are the goals you have? How many TAPs are working? TAPs is technical assistance professionals. How many TAPs are involved in that? What sectors are involved? Head Start, Early Head Start, Child Care, Pre-K, K-2. What settings are involved? Is it just for family homes? Is it for centers only? Is it school-based only? Who's the supervising or employing organization? And often it's going to be the Child Care Resource and Referral. Fund sources, governance, who sets the goals, standards, evaluates and collects data, and what geographic area is served. And this kind of mapping of what's going on in your state gives you a great foundation for moving forward to develop more consistent policies and supports for TA providers across your state. As part of the learning table, we learned a lot from states about the direction they're taking with their technical assistance systems and the professional development that they're providing for TA providers. We found that many states are really starting to move beyond this thing about this focus on structural quality and being more goal-driven, particularly related to goals for children, outcomes for children. We learned that states are really focusing on accountability and evaluation and having greater accountability in system management and delivery of technical assistance. They're spending far more time gathering important data and using that for a continuous quality improvement approach. They're increasingly very focused on a cross-systems approach and really integrating the sectors into their technical assistance systems. And they're focusing on upgrading the skills, competency, and ongoing professional development for technical assistance professionals. Now, Debbie has very thoughtfully put together a landing pad for the learning table on effective technical assistance that has all the resources and the PowerPoints for the learning table, and you can get access to all of that. So here's the link to that. It's on the Build National Learning Network site, and it is a really great resource of wonderful tools, articles, and including the articles that Sheila referenced are all here. So it's time now for you to tell us what your questions are, and thank you for taking this journey with us.
Hi everyone, this is Nick Vusick with Child Care Aware of America. I do handle the government affairs here. It looks like many of you figured out the question box as is. If you haven't, there's a small box you can enter your questions in. We'll read them off for the presenters to answer. Will this webinar be recorded to view at a later date? I'll take that one, yes. All of our webinars for the Raise Your Hand webinar series are recorded. They can either be found on our webinars page where you'll find a link, or they'll be found on Child Care Aware of America's YouTube page as well. Will there be a copy of this webinar provided? Yes. Like I said, it's on our YouTube page. How do we get the PowerPoint? The PowerPoint will actually be put on our website. We're on our webinars page, which we'll show you the link to later. Let's see. Okay, a lot of questions coming in. Will the initial thrust for these goals be poverty areas targeted? I don't know if Billie or Sheila would like to handle that one.
Could you repeat that one more time? I just want to see if we understand that.
Would the initial thrust for these goals be poverty areas targeted?
Would the initial thrust for these goals be
poverty targeted areas?
Billie, do you?
Well, I think what is being asked is when we're looking at the goals for technical assistance and focusing on children's foundational skills, should the priority be for the lowest income children? I think that depends on your fund source, on your program goals. I mean, ideally, a focus on foundational skills for children should be for all children involved in early childhood programs. And but you know, resources may dictate where you have your primary focus. But this would be for all children, I think. Sheila, what do you think?
I completely agree. These are foundational competencies that really do predict to school readiness for all children. You know, it's certainly the case that children being served in programs where you know, children are from low-income families and where children may have weaker skills initially in some of these areas. You know, it's especially important for these children to experience very rich supports for their development. We actually know from research that children who have weaker skills benefit the most from very high quality programs, and we know that children who have some lags in development also need very high quality programs to begin to develop skills in the foundational areas that will you know, be at a level that really give them a good chance of succeeding in school. So these are, I guess the summary would be these foundational competencies are important for all children and especially important for children growing up in you know, poverty and low-income families.
Oh, that's great. Our next question is, how do you encourage child care providers to welcome TA into their setting?
That's a great question.
That is a great question, and probably some of you noticed that Sheila said that some TA providers are anxious for support in how to work with people who are resistant to change. We'd all like that, wouldn't we? I think that one of the things that really helps with that is that whoever's receiving the TA, both if it's a classroom teacher and and their director or their supervisor, really need to be bought into the importance of the technical assistance, what the focus is, and what they will gain from it. So they have a reason to participate because they will benefit.
I think that's right, and often really focusing on child outcomes can make a difference. You know, that encouraging statement, well, these are things, you know, you might want to try because we know that they can really benefit your children. They can really make a difference for their later success in school. And in, you know, the New York City programs we've worked in, where we've worked directly with teachers and TA providers, we often hear from the TA providers that, you know, even more resistant teachers care a whole lot about the children in their programs, and that's often the ticket. And then reinforcing, you know, responses that children have to some of these strategies, and really celebrating some of that growth, you know, that teachers can see in children as a result of changes in classrooms can be really energizing, I think, for teachers and directors too.
Great. Our next question is, what is the most important qualification that you feel a technical assistance professional should have? Should they have coursework completed, experience, or both?
It's hard to imagine that you could do without the more formal coursework and background, because, you know, that's where you're going to get the knowledge. And I think experience is important if it's the right kind of experience, and experience will be especially beneficial if it's experience where the TA provider has an opportunity to really get feedback on their methods and what they're targeting, and feedback that gives them an idea of whether, you know, they're encouraging effective teaching practices with methods such as modeling and very positive feedback, and building a strong relationship with teachers that we know are effective. But I think experience by itself, you know, isn't always the magic bullet. So it's hard to pick one or the other. But I think when it comes to experience, yes, it's important, but it has to be an experience where there are opportunities to learn from the experience. And that's really what we've been talking about in terms of the ongoing supports for TA providers. Billie, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this, and Sheila, I think you were stated it beautifully. You know, I think for a TA, it really depends on what the role of the TA provider is. So if they're going to be a classroom coach, that would mean that, and I agree with Sheila, that there needs to be training and education as well as experience, because the person, the coach, really, to be effective, is going to need to be able to model the best practices and coach the teacher through rehearsal and feedback and self-reflection. So that real-world experience of working with young children is going to be very critical. If it's a person who is going to serve as a consultant and come in and perhaps talk about one element of practice in the center, let's say around handling medications or something, that might require a different kind of background. So I think it also needs to be really tailored to what is the role, what is the outcome for technical assistance that you're looking for, what are the goals, and that to some extent will drive what the qualifications need to be.
Great, thank you. It looks like we have quite a few questions coming in. At this point, we're going to have to take, I think we have time for one or two more questions. So our next question is, often a program's level of quality seems to be directly attributed to poor leadership skills. Is there any data or models on how TA for directors on leadership skills can impact the quality of the program?
Yeah, I think there is, in the McCormick, I would really refer you to the McCormick Center. If I get if you send me the email of the questioner, I'll send you some information about the McCormick Center, but they've developed some really good tools that's for helping improve the effectiveness of program administration, and they have an assessment tool, I think it's the BAS, the PAS.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that there's actually emerging interest in thinking about including directors and ed directors more in the technical assistance coaching work that's going on. When we did our interview study with TA providers, we found that they typically didn't spend a lot of time with the directors doing anything more intensive than kind of, checking in and explaining the work they were doing with teachers. But I think there's growing interest in even providing some help to the director in learning how to coach teachers and provide ongoing observations and feedback. That's something we're actually doing in our demonstration here in New York City. And I think there are a couple states that are beginning to look at building the capacity of programs, especially through the director's leadership, to engage in ongoing quality improvement, because that external coach won't be there forever or even usually as long as we would like. So we need the directors to be really equipped to take on the task of continuing to work with teachers and engaging staff and reflecting on effective practices.
Sheila, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that is really a trend nationally to look at the program director as part of the sustainability plan for technical assistance. So thanks for that.
It's a good question, really good. All these questions are terrific.
And I think we're going to end with one final one, and that is, does the proposed federal Strong Start legislation include support for coaching, mentoring, and consultation services in the states?
Oh, what a wonderful question. I think there is some funding for quality support of programs. And I am sorry that I don't know the details on, what kinds of activities that could support. I imagine there will, be a lot of discretion allowed within the states, but we can check that out unless, Billie, you have more particulars, but we could certainly get back to folks on that. It's a great question.
Yeah, that's exactly my take on it, and we can find out.
Well, at this time, we would like to conclude our the last of our Raise Your Hand webinar series. We would like to thank Billie and Sheila for their great presentation and answering the questions out there. If you have further questions or maybe some of the ones that weren't answered, you can see their follow-up contact information here. And at this time, we would also like to take the time to announce that on Wednesday, February 19th, 2014, Child Care Aware of America will be hosting a live Reddit AMA, Ask Me Anything, and simultaneous Twitter chat from 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. The Reddit AMA Twitter chat will bring together the largest coalition of early childhood advocates in the country, consisting of national organizations that fight for early learning policy daily. This Reddit AMA Twitter chat will allow everyone to ask questions they might have, either about early childhood policy, the child care subsidy system, the Preschool for All movement, or just simply what it's like being an advocate and or national organization in Washington, D.C. More information will be coming out in the next few days, but for now you can go to usa.childcareaware.org/webinars to learn more about it and stay up to date with what's going on with it. If you want more information, we'll also be talking about it on Twitter quite a bit. We'll be sending out some tweets, and you can find us at USA Child Care on Twitter. And if you want to follow along for our Twitter chat that day, we'll be using the hashtag RYH4childcare. And to find the presentation for today's webinar and all of our past Raise Your Hand webinars, which you can see here, you can go to youtube.com/CCA of America. Once again, we'd like to thank you for participating on our webinar, and we'd like to thank our great presenters for a great job today.